Well, hey everybody, my name is Matt Ersman, and if we haven't met yet, I am the host of the USMB Lead Pods, the podcast from the Mennonite Brethren family. And we have done 57 episodes so far, and I know that many of you listen on a regular basis, wherever you listen to podcasts, and we decided, you know what, we record all of these via Zoom, so we have the video footage of all these interviews, and so we're trying something new this week where we're actually going to release a video version of this week's podcast. So we'd love to hear from you. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching, let us know if you like having the video of these podcasts or if the audio kind of suits you better for the car or the workouts or whatever. We're just trying something new, and we'd like to hear from you if you enjoy it or not. So let us know. Leave a comment wherever you're watching. But before I just want to get right to our conversation. So in this episode, I talked to a friend of mine, Haley Veturis, who's kind of an expert in the church communication, church social media, church online, digital world, and had a lot of really practical and helpful insights with kind of a unique angle on what the church can learn from the world of online dating. So I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation. So again, let us know if you like having the video or you prefer just the audio. Let's get right to it. Here's my conversation with my friend Haley Veturis. All right, my friends. Well, today I'm excited to introduce you to Haley Veturis. I've known Haley for a few years now, and I've kind of been in the church comm world for a while now, and Haley is just one of those go-to people. Everyone loves her. She's a genius, and I just feel so honored to have her on our show today. So Haley, thank you so much for being with us.
Wow. Thank you, Matt. I love that introduction.
Yes. I was just watching part of an interview you did with Carrie Newhoff. So I mean, if you're good enough for Carrie Newhoff, you're good enough for the Lead Pods. That's what I like to say. So
And Mr. Kinnaman as well. That was a good
yes,
interview. That was good
yes,
times.
absolutely.
Thank
We're
you.
very honored to have you. If you haven't met Haley yet, Haley is a partner at a company called Digifora. We might talk about them here in just a minute. She previously was on staff at Saddleback with Rick Warren, and then also a really cool church called Bayside, which actually I didn't really know much about, but I got to know through you, Haley.
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot of really great work as well. So any other bio stuff? What else did I miss? What else should we know about you?
Oh gosh. I think you can just find it at digifora.com/Haley Veturis.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so Digifora, tell us real quick what that is and what you do.
So, Digifora is a company founded by my business partner, Justin Brackett. He and I met back in the day when social media was just in its infancy, and we were tasked to take on these social media roles at our churches. He was at Seacoast Church in South Carolina, and I was at Saddleback Church. And I was just so blessed to be at that place at that time. Right place, right timing for the position. But a huge weight and responsibility because it was a position where I had like a gut instinct on what I needed to do on these channels for the church, but there were no bosses that could really explain to me what my job was or how to do it. So I feel blessed to have that's always kind of been my case, each job that I've taken. But again, it was the wild, wild west. So I was a leader still am, of a group called the Best of Social Media. It's a private group of people that represent denominations, mega churches, and faith-based nonprofits. We started this group just to be iron sharpening iron at this time when no one really knew what the job was. And it's just progressed today. So carrying the weight and responsibility of being the voice of your megachurch or your denomination is a huge responsibility. And at the time in the beginning, people were humble enough to admit that they didn't know everything there was to know about every single channel. And it's funny because the channels have only doubled and tripled in numbers, and people think that they're all the experts in every single one, and no one wants to really humbly admit that they need help anymore. So just seeing that change in progression over the years has been interesting. Long story short, that's how I met Justin. I invited him to be in the group. He ended up making his way to Lakewood Church with Joel Osteen, and I made my way up to Bayside. And we coincidentally felt God calling us out of ministry world to different endeavors in the same month of 2020 in November. And neither of those endeavors fully panned out for either of us. And God brought us back together, and he invited me to be a partner at Digifora. It's a marketing agency. And we take on a lot of faith-based clients. They're not our main clientele, but we take on a lot because we still love the church so much and believe in its mission and want to support it however we can. So we have a lot of faith-based nonprofits and churches as clients. And so if you're interested, visit digi4.com and let's have a conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry, that
awesome.
was a very long way to answer your
No, no, no,
question.
no. That's great. That's really awesome. It's good to hear some of the background because I know, like I said, I've kind of been following you for a while. I know you were doing social media stuff at Saddleback long
Mm-hmm.
before many other churches were doing that. And at
Yes.
Bayside, you guys did quite a few really cool kind of progressive digital
Mm-hmm.
outreach things that, again, I think a lot of people weren't up to yet. So I guess I'm just curious, why is it so important to you? How did that become kind of what you're known for? And just tell us more about how you got into that and some of the things you've learned along the way.
Yeah, so social to me has always, these channels were created for people to connect with other people. And I got on Facebook when you had to have a college email to get on. I had
Yes.
a little high school boyfriend that went to Stanford and we kept in touch and he told me to get on Facebook. So I feel like I was really in at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And none of my friends were on it yet. So I just had added a bunch of his Stanford friends who I didn't even know. And then always just knew it was a way to connect with other people. And somewhere along the lines, I think probably the boomer generation just saw it as a megaphone communication tool.
Mhm.
And that's never what it was for. And so my God gave me the vision to see how can we bring this tool that has never had, we've never had a platform that has made us exposed to so many people at the same time as social media tools. But again, it's not a one-way communication platform, it's a two-way communication platform. So how can we segment, like bring businesses and churches to two-way communication where in the past we've only been used to this like one-way communication blast through
Yep.
broadcasts, through email marketing, direct mail. Even it was a huge shift in the industry and a lot of people didn't see that shift. And again, God just gave me the vision to see that. And so I was just in the wild west navigating my way through. And uh, God gave me a vision for a social strategy, and I was able to help share that with a bunch of other churches solely because I was at Saddleback and we teach other churches a lot of different things from Celebrate Recovery to the concentric circles of ministry
Yep.
and community. Um, but yeah, it's been a wild ride looking back at it now. And gosh, I was so young then when it started. And I just feel
Yeah.
so old to now be teaching some Gen Zers how to do social because they're like, we don't understand. And I'm like, how do you understand? You were born with these tools. How do you
Right.
not understand how to use them? It's just crazy to me. So, still teaching people the same social strategy along the way, and um, it's never changed, honestly, because it's not about the platform as much as it's about people connecting with other people. And for
Right.
the most part, people don't change that much.
Yeah.
Look at all the life application in the Bible that is still good for us today. It's
Mhm.
because we were created in the image of God, and it's like not very, I can't find the words. We don't change
Right. Right.
basically. And so there's basic human needs at the core, at our core, and it's just finding those and connecting with those and reaching people ultimately for God's glory.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. Like you said, like the tools and the platforms might change, right? But communication is
Right.
still communication. I think that's what we get caught up on
Yes, thank you. You said it much better than I did.
well, no, but we get
I'm on
caught
the
up in
West
this.
Coast. I guess I need some more coffee.
Yeah, people like to talk about like the strategies or the hacking this system or that system, but really it's just about effective communication across channels, which is
Yeah.
what I want to kind of dive into now. So I was just at a conference a few weeks ago where you were one of the speakers, Haley, and you
Mhm.
did a really interesting talk. I love the angle where you kind of you compared the church a little bit to online dating, right? And
I
one thing,
compared it completely to online dating.
okay.
Yes.
So
I
tell
know
us,
it was
that
kinda
might
out
sound
there.
strange. That might sound strange to some people. So tell us, what was that all about?
Uh, so basically, I realized there's a parallel between the concept of online dating being pursued first digitally for a real in-person relationship and pursuing people digitally as the church.
Hmm.
And what So I've had a lot of experience in online dating. That's how my fiance and I met, through some dating apps.
Hmm.
Yes, I said some. We're connected twice on two different dating apps. But I just saw
You're
this
gonna end up on a
huge
commercial somewhere. Like your story is gonna be a Super Bowl commercial. Anyway,
hopefully a
continue.
success story.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Um, but I just saw this parallel of, wow, like we used to pursue people in person, and churches still think that people will just drive by your church and look at it and be impressed and decide to walk in because you had a cool banner on the sidewalk.
Right.
But that's not the case anymore. People are pursuing people digitally for relationships and on social media sites, on dating apps. And they're doing the same when they're looking for somewhere to eat. I'm going to go look on Yelp first to find a good restaurant in the area. And if they have bad reviews, I'm not going to go because I'm not going to waste my time or money. And
Hmm.
the same thing is happening for churches. If people look around just geographically in their local area, does your church come up?
Yeah.
Sadly, a lot of churches don't because they're
Hmm.
not optimized on the digital space. And so it just really became visible to me that, wow, like today, your church's digital presence is the first impression that really matters. If your church were on a dating app and you had to judge your church based solely on its digital presence, would you swipe right?
Yeah.
And when I asked myself that question, I was like, well, my churches are up to date. So, yes, I would. But
Right.
for some churches that I get to secret shop, they're not. And so a
Mhm.
lot of people would essentially swipe left and never get to meet that church in person, never
Mhm.
make their way over there to start building a relationship, even just to see if they like it. And so I just think that's like a tragedy for churches. And we need to be thinking like that. We need to be thinking like, do we have a good enough first impression digitally for someone to essentially swipe right and make their way down to church, to our church?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting parallel because I'm old enough to where I was never on any dating apps, but
Oh, bless. You are one of the blessed ones.
I know I totally
It's a
am.
journey.
But like I totally see the parallel because again, my understanding of dating apps is you basically see someone's picture, maybe a little bit of very brief
Mhm.
information, and then the further you get, the more you learn about them, the more you might take the conversation offline, and meet in person, blah blah blah. And it really is. That's how people are checking out churches now, right? Like we hear all the time at my church. Oh yeah, like I know your Pastor Brent because I've been watching online for a month, and oh yeah, she's on worship before. I've seen her before. And
Mhm.
so I guess what else, that's a huge shift, right? Because
Well,
not that
you're a very well thought through person, Matt. So you would read the whole profile. Most people don't.
yeah,
They
right,
just look at the picture, and if they don't like it, they swipe left.
right.
So that's what I'm trying to challenge people with. If they looked at that picture of your church or whatever you have on your digital presence
Hmm.
within a few seconds, what kind of impression are you leaving? Would they swipe left or right?
Right,
Because not everyone's going to be like you and like read through the whole profile and find out if they like you. They're just going to look and be done with it
right.
within a few seconds. And so you don't have very long to make a first impression. So we want to make sure all the right information and optimized photos is up there so that
Yeah.
that's when people land on your page and they don't give you the time of day, really, that
Hmm.
they're impressed by what they do see.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So this is obviously what you do for a living, and we could talk about this for days. But we just for a few minutes, if we could just get
You
a
mean
high level.
marketing, not online dating, right?
Right, right, right.
Okay,
Marketing, not online either.
good.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Yes, yes, yes. But so let's say, because what you're describing is people who kind of take a casual first look. That's most people who are going to be looking for a church, right? If you're
Mhm.
kind of just starting your church hopping, church shopping, whatever, you're probably not going to read every page on a website. You may check out one social media profile, maybe. You're probably not going to go too deep. So if someone
Right.
is taking that really high level first view at your church, what should we be mindful of as the people who are on the other side building these pages? What are some of just the high level things that maybe should be no brainers, but sometimes aren't? Like what do we need to do better?
Oh gosh. Well, so in my talk, the first point was first impressions matter, and we
Yeah.
just talked about those first impressions. And some churches are sadly like putting way more effort into their bulletin than they are into optimizing their online presence. And
Right.
so I just brought up some points when people are out there searching for the best church to go to, like hands down, they should be seeing your church come up in the top 5 in Google search.
Mhm.
So is your church in the top 5 in Google search? Like, I don't live where everyone listening
Mhm.
lives. So check right now and see what comes up in Google search when it comes to churches. Do they see great reviews? And a lot of them, not just one or two, but reviews are such an easy tool to, people are going to see if you have 5 stars or not.
Mhm.
And so you can help skew that a little with your volunteers. I think it's volunteers love your church, so they should be leaving great reviews. Ask them to go do that. Ask your staff to go do that. That's just an easy way to show people looking at a glance, this is a trusted place to go to.
Yeah.
Um, are they going to see pictures of the friendly community they will meet when they come, or do they see pictures of just a cold building? Like,
Mhm.
buildings are not welcoming or friendly. I don't know why churches are obsessed with showing them on their site. It is
Mhm.
important to show, like, when you're like telling people where the location is, but like front center of your website, I don't think is the best. I think show the people they're going to meet when they get there in the community they're missing out on currently and could be a part of.
Yep.
So friendly pictures are important. When they look at your, like, if they're searching for you on social, do
Mhm.
they see updated social media accounts? If you have an active presence on there, because it's 2022 and you definitely should have an active social media presence. But sadly, most churches don't have an active presence because they don't, again, allocate the resources to keep that going. And then what else? Oh, also, when they do land on your presence, is it just a billboard of ads for what's going on at your church? Because
Yeah.
that shows me that you don't have a good social media strategy. You're just advertising. And again, it's that one-way communication, and that's not what people are on social media for. So you're probably not
Right.
getting great engagement because you're just pushing ads and information at people. And we're already the most over advertised generation of all time, and it just keeps getting worse. I don't even know how that's possible, but it does.
Yeah.
So when people come to your site, they should have a clear sense of what to do when they visit, what your children's ministry should look like, what matters to you, and what's valuable to your church.
Mhm.
We secret shopped for one church, and we asked them, "Is what are some of the key values like of your church? Is family a value?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're huge on families." And I was like, "Really?" Because that was nowhere in your communication that you handed out to people in your bulletins. That was nowhere in your slides on the weekends. That was nowhere in your stage announcements. I didn't see that anywhere. And so my first impression of your church was not that you value family at all. I was actually really confused why I didn't see any family promoted, or pictures or people on stage or part of your announcements anywhere. And
Yeah.
so they were like, "Really? Wow. Like, that's, thank you for that perspective. Like, we did
Mhm.
not realize that that was what people were walking away thinking." And
Right.
so it's just, sometimes it's good to have a set of fresh eyes that aren't so in it every single day. Because I remember being on church staff, we're
Yep.
just so in it, and we think everyone should care about what we care about, but
Yep.
we forget people have lives, and sometimes the most obvious thing is right in front of us, but we can't see it because we're so busy in certain details of events or ministries or things happening that we
Mhm.
don't see it. And so Digifora, we offer a secret shopping experience. My business partner and I, we have experience from small churches to mega churches, and we will come and give that fresh perspective.
Mhm.
The last church we visited, he noticed there were a bunch of like dead worms on the ground on the sidewalk. I wasn't
Yeah.
noticing that because I was looking at all the happy families walking out of the kids ministry building, and I was like, "Oh, that's a wonderful thing."
Mhm.
But he noticed, he's like, "This is not a great first impression, all these dead worms on the sidewalk." So we notice all sorts of things when we come and secret shop at your church. And so visit our site and just hit the contact button and secret shop as the keyword. And we'll get back to you with some information on that if that's something you're interested in. Um, we're not coming to just be judgy. That's not our goal. Our goal is just to help think through things that you might be missing from a marketing communications perspective.
Yeah. Like you said, that outside perspective is so helpful because we are just so in it. Like most church leaders are so busy, so many tasks on our plate. So getting the
Yeah.
outside perspective, I think, is so, so crucial.
So first impressions matter, and then the next point was follow up really matters.
Yeah.
So like we said, there you might have some communication cards in the back
Mhm.
of your seats during
Mhm.
service for first time visitors, but are people on stage continuously communicating those cards? because
Yeah.
they forget that they're there every week. But the first time visitor needs to be told what to do. People go where you tell them to go. So
Yep.
if you want people to fill out those cards, you need to tell them, and you need to tell them where to put them and when. I think
Mhm.
that's so important. And with the dating theme, you're
Yeah.
not going to get a second date if you don't ask for it. And so
Mm.
we need to think about that as the church. People aren't going to come back unless we ask them to, or if we even know they were there. So it's
Right.
important to track that. We asked one church, hey, we filled out your card, but we didn't hear anything.
Mm.
And they're like, oh, well, we don't process it unless um, it's a faith commitment. We were like,
Oh,
what? Unless
wow. Yeah.
somebody made a decision of faith, you don't process the communications card.
Oh,
That
man.
is a huge loss. And
Yeah.
so if we lived in that town, we would not go on a second date with that church because
Yeah.
they didn't even know we were there to begin with, because they didn't process the card that we filled out that was in their back seat,
Right.
um, ready for
Okay.
us. So it's important to make sure you have communication strategies for follow-up in place.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
I have a kind of really nitty gritty practical question about those kind of connect cards or whatever you call them.
Sure.
So we have like a QR code text thing at my church that
Mhm.
it's a similar thing, right? And I know sometimes it's my job to decide this, sometimes it's another person's job, but like
Yeah,
how often do we take time out of the service to verbalize that? Or if it's in the seat pocket and there's a pre-service slide, maybe there's like if there's kind of things in the room that talk about them, is it important that we verbally mention it every time? Because I know I've had people
absolutely.
say like, we've got a 60-minute service and it takes this many seconds to talk about it. We just did it last week. Do we need to do it again? Can you talk about just the importance of repeating it every week?
Well, you absolutely need to talk about it again if you have the expectation that there are new people in the service again that
Yeah.
week. And
Yep.
that, again, being in the church space, we just have our blinders on and we forget.
Mhm.
Every weekend should be geared for new people and to walk people through that process of life change and transformation. That's why we're there, right? We
Yeah.
get bored of saying it over and over again, just like I remember campuses at Saddleback. We had 19 locations, and I oversaw all the volunteers we had running their social channels. And some people are like, "Oh, we keep seeing the same graphic over and over again." I'm like, "Yeah, but you work for the church. The average person
Right.
is not going to follow 19 location accounts and
Right.
see this over and over again." So we
Yep.
just have to remember, as the church, who this is all for.
Mhm.
This The church is a hotel for sinners, not a hospital for the saints. And
Mhm.
sadly, too often we treat it um, as a hotel for the saints rather than a hospital for the sinners to
Yeah.
come and get
Mhm.
triage and to
Yeah.
have a new life when they leave. And
Right.
so if it's I would say if it's not important to communicate to new people, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you want to grow your membership, it's
Mhm.
important to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so
Yeah.
just the texting is great. My church does that too at Bayside.
Mhm.
I can repeat it back because I'm used to hearing it so often. Even the giving
Yeah.
is through texting. It's like text give to 56316. And
Right.
so I think if people in your audience can repeat it back, is that a negative thing?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
No, that's a great thing, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
So communicate it. If new people are important to you, I would communicate it each week.
That's good. That's really
Mhm.
good.
And it's funny too, because the pre-service slides, a lot of new people don't come in early. They
Yep.
come in mid-service and they just sneak into wherever's comfortable, usually towards
Yep.
the back to
Mhm.
sit, right? So they're
Yep.
going to miss those slides anyway. So communicating it is very important.
Yeah. That's really
Mhm.
good.
Yeah,
Okay. Can I go back and ask one more kind of nitty gritty question? Then we'll keep going.
absolutely. I love the nitty-gritty.
Okay, awesome. So you talked about reviews. So actually, a couple years ago, my church we took time out of a service and asked people right then and there to rate us on Google and Facebook, and
Oh,
we got a ton of reviews, and it was awesome.
hopefully
So
good ones.
they were very positive. But
Wonderful.
you mentioned Yelp, and your talk was actually one of the first times I've heard people recommend that you check your church for Yelp. A lot of
Hmm.
people think of restaurants or whatever. So I'm kind of curious. In my community, I looked and I don't think there's any churches on Yelp around my community. Like there weren't any ratings. There was no profile. Like the church space
Yeah.
on Yelp was just kind of quiet around here. So I guess, have you found, is that kind of geographical a little bit, or is Yelp just kind of a big untapped market that churches should pay more attention to? Or what have you kind of seen with Yelp specifically?
Yeah, I know people that search for every type of thing on Yelp. And so the question is, do you want to be discoverable? It sounds like you have no competition on Yelp.
Yeah.
So getting your
Mhm.
church a profile on there will only help your church become more discoverable to those who are looking and seeking. And if it's a matter between a waste of time and being discovered,
Mhm.
I think we want to be discovered, right? It's not a waste of time for a new person to find us that way. And so, a lot of churches we secret shop, they don't even own their Yelp account. So when I'm going to look for the address and to drive there for it, I need to make sure that it's sending me to the right location.
Yeah.
Funny story, I had a church and I just asked the guy who hired us to go, which one should we go? Which campus should we go to first? And he told us, oh, go to this one. So I went on their Yelp. I clicked, actually, it was their Apple Maps. This is
Okay.
also something you need to check. Are
Yep.
your addresses up to date on Apple and Google Maps?
Hmm.
Um, the Apple Maps took us to the other location,
Okay.
but
Yep.
it was labeled the same as the one he wanted us to go to.
Okay.
So when we didn't even know we were at the wrong location until mid-service because they just didn't have any signage that
Oh
even
man.
said the location. It just said the generic church name.
Hmm.
And so we ended up making our way back to the other location so that we wouldn't miss their second service.
Hmm.
But that was probably one of the best things that could have happened because if somebody's looking and they still would have ended up at their church, just the wrong
Location.
spot.
Right.
It's good for them to go back and to update their address. So for Yelp, also, it asked if I wanted to claim this business.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm a visitor. That's
Right.
terrifying that I
Right.
could claim their church and they wouldn't even know. So if you're not doing it, I want you to know on Yelp, somebody else could very well go and claim your church and put whatever they want up there. And
Yeah.
so just managing those impressions is really important
Hmm.
and kind of crafting that narrative. You can be the first to post photos for your church on there
Hmm.
rather than somebody else.
Hmm.
If somebody does not have a great experience, they're going to tell you on Yelp.
Right.
So make sure you go and you claim your business. They'll give you a Yelp business account and you have a little more control where you can have somebody on there responding as someone from your church, which is really important. But mostly like you don't want some random person claiming your church. What if there's a disgruntled person out there and they just go
Right.
and trash it?
Right.
Then you've lost your opportunity. So get on Yelp, go claim your church, go update it with current photos, current hours, the current address,
Hmm.
for the full sake of being discovered.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Okay, one more kind of nitty gritty question. We'll get back to your talk here. So,
Sure.
and again, I know this is a complicated thing. There's not really an easy answer. And again, we should hire you to give us all the real information. But if, let's say,
Yes.
if a church isn't showing up very high on search results, it used to be able to kind of hack that a little bit, but it's getting harder and harder. And also like the
Mhm.
location based stuff is kind of difficult. So maybe you'll show up at the top if you're nearby, but if you're a couple miles away, maybe you won't show up near the top anymore. So,
Mhm.
and again, Google and Facebook, the algorithms keep changing, right? So what
Mhm.
are just some really high level, if we're not showing up as high as we want to on search results, are there easy things we can do, or are we just, yeah, what can we do if we want to improve that a little bit?
Yeah, their SEO is still the number one tool on church sites, and a lot of church sites have gone very minimal in copy on their site,
Hmm.
which is not helping them actually in search.
Okay.
So Google will scrub your website for keywords, and how many times do you list your locations and your cities on there?
Hmm.
Like you spell them out
Yeah.
just the one time on the location page, or is it anywhere else? And
Hmm.
so you can do that. You can go and write blogs just for the sake of adding good SEO to your page, to your site, and
Mhm.
that will really help you in search. Actually, like posting onto Twitter from your church account also helps you in Google search. People
Oh,
don't know
really?
that.
Huh.
Um, and having a YouTube channel really helps you in Google search. I keep telling churches, get off of Vimeo. It is not the number two search engine in the world. YouTube is. So why
Right.
aren't you on there?
Right.
It's such low hanging fruit for discoverability.
Mhm.
People should be storing their services and things on YouTube and
Yep.
then updating their descriptions. Descriptions are easy SEO collectors.
Mm.
So have your church title in there, have the link to your website in your YouTube description.
That's good.
Describe what the message was about. It doesn't take very long to do if you're really listening and taking notes during the service, right?
Right. Right. Yep.
So there's just so many things like that, Matt, that you can do that will tie it all together and only help you in Google search.
Hmm.
Again, because it's all about discoverability. Is your church discoverable?
Hmm.
Because if not, it's someone is going to find the church that is and go there.
Yep. Yeah, that's really good.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I keep interrupting you. Where were
Oh,
you?
no, you're good.
You're talking about your talk. Where do we leave off here?
So first impressions matter. Follow up matters. We want that second date. People swiped right, and if you got the first date. If you want the second date, it's all because of our faith. Our faith really matters. And at this point, it was more for the people in the room, the church leaders out there, just really encouraging them that these digital tools matter. A digital connection is still a real connection. I
Yeah.
shared the story about how when my fiance was deployed, we watched church together like every Sunday. He got one day off a week on deployment, and he chose for it to be Sunday, and he was 7 or 8 hours ahead of me.
Hmm.
So we picked the service that made the most sense to watch online and watched together. Like I held up my phone and like we were on FaceTime and I
Hmm.
pointed it towards the screen with the service playing, and we attended every weekend. But like sadly, most churches would not have counted us as attending any of those weekends
Right.
because they're only counting bodies in the room.
Hmm.
And that is such an old way of thinking. I know everybody's going off right now on Elon Musk for wanting his executives to be present in the office.
Hmm.
People are taking it out of context too. They're saying all employees, but he really geared it towards executives, which leadership leads people.
Yeah.
It is
Right.
important for them to be present. And also, it's his business. He can do with it what he will.
Hmm.
Anyway, side note. So they're just saying the stay at home workplace has become so normal. I think it's become comfortable to people,
Yeah.
um, honestly. But oh gosh, I had a point with all of that. I
Well, being
swear I
being in the
did.
room. I don't know
Oh,
if that's.
yeah, so the stay-at-home thing is real,
Mhm.
also, life is real, life happens, and people are getting sick, and the only way they can watch church sometimes is from home, or if they travel and they don't wanna miss a service, it's nice to have an online stream to be able to watch, but it's also important that we count those people. I
Yeah.
remember Pastor Rick always said, "We count people because people count," and he goes, "How many of you count your tithe money?"
Yeah.
Every church out
Right.
there. Like, so why aren't we
Exactly.
counting the people?
Yep.
And people watching digitally count just as much as people in the room.
Hmm.
Sometimes people watching digitally will sit longer and pay more attention than people in the room. Sometimes
Yep.
not, but um, all that to say is that a digital presence is a digital connection is a real connection. People are meeting digitally, like on dating apps, and making real life connections. So why can't they do the same with your church? You
Yeah.
know, it's a great gateway into eventually coming in person, but we need to have a system and a process to make sure that that experience online is also a great experience. And so I also just encouraged people in the room, like, thank you so much for what you do right now.
Mm-hmm.
People are leaving jobs left and right because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a really great podcast of this girl talking about choosing your hard. Life is hard, but you get
Yeah.
to choose your hard. I'm
Mm.
dieting for my wedding right now, and that's hard. But showing up to my wedding not confident with what I look like, that would be harder to face to
Mm.
me. So I'm going to choose to do the hard work now so that I'm confident and feel beautiful on my wedding day. Um, and churches, like working for a church is hard, but
Yeah.
working for outside companies, for secular bosses who might all be about the LGBTQ Pride Month right now. Like that
Right.
would be harder to me
Yeah.
than the hard that you face at a church. So all that to say, you get to choose your hard. Your jobs are hard, but they are so needed right now. And God has you in this place at this time for a reason. Never underestimate that. You are so valuable and so needed. I get to attend church now, first time in like 13 years.
Yeah.
And I just look around at the staff that are there and present and just pray over them. I'm just so grateful that they're there and going through this time right
Yeah.
now. And so what you guys do matters. And I just want you to hear that and to
Mm.
know that you are valued and people are so grateful for what you do. And um gosh, what did I leave with the last verse from the Apostle Paul? The three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
And the greatest of these is love. So let's love people well. and
Yeah.
let's utilize the tools we have at our at our disposal
Mhm.
to love people.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I appreciate you saying that because you're right. Church work is extremely hard, but
Yeah.
like I love the choose your hard thing because that's so true. I love that perspective. That's really
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, it
Okay,
helped
our
me get
time's
in the
going.
diet mode.
Yes. Okay, our time's going really fast. At least one more kind of big idea I want to hit with you.
Sure.
I've heard you speak a few times, and I think you've mentioned this a few times that you've worked at Saddleback and Bayside, very large, successful churches. But you've
Hmm.
mentioned, I think your parents attend a pretty small church,
Yes.
and to stream their services, they've got an iPad propped up somewhere that's going straight to Facebook Live, right?
Hmm.
So I know a lot of the churches listening. We have a few pretty large congregations in our denomination, but a lot of them are kind of smaller churches. And so
Yeah.
I feel for them. Like I work at a pretty big church, and so there's a lot of people listening who there's maybe one, two, three people on staff. They're hustling just to make things happen week to week. So I can imagine
Hmm.
adding Yelp and adding a YouTube description, like this just sounds like a lot to them. So, but again, I know you work with churches of all sizes. So
Hmm.
is there anything specific you want to say to kind of the smaller congregations represented here?
Um, yeah. So my dad is the one that does the Facebook Live for his church, and he does set
Awesome.
up an iPad in the back of the room. They have about 50 total attenders, and a lot of those are older people that are not comfortable with being in person anymore or are more
Mhm.
susceptible to catching illnesses. So they do watch from home on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And uh, again, a digital connection is still a real connection. They still feel like they're attending every single weekend, and they're watching it and they're not missing church. And so, is it a 4K video stream? No, but
Mhm.
are they still getting God's word at the community they've been connected to? Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's what matters at the end of the day and is most important. And if you're a really small church, again, like this, you need to utilize the volunteers that you have. Don't burn them out, but utilize them, especially if
Mhm.
you don't have the staffing or capacity. And we offer some coaching calls too, if that's something that would be good for you, and can walk you through setting up these accounts. Once they're set up, they're pretty easy to maintain.
Mhm.
But it's just about getting discovered. And I think if you're such a small church, you want as many people to discover your church as possible, and then find what's unique that you offer to the community, and just really like land on that. My parents' church has a great kids ministry for they do like little musicals, and that's the thing that's probably thriving the most at that church right now, and they all get behind it and support it, and they get kids that come that don't even attend the church, and
Yeah.
kids from the community, and actually a lot of special needs kids have been coming and plugging into that as well. And so um, that's just one ministry that they really highlight and focus on, and that is like a gateway to Vacation Bible School. And
Mhm.
so it's bringing life to the church where they might not be growing otherwise,
Mhm.
but putting that and putting those photos on social media carefully, of course, because they're minors.
Sure.
um, but just finding like what unique things do you offer that you can really get out there and be discovered for, and then bring new people into that community. And
Mhm.
so I know it's hard. I know there's so many things. You don't need to be on all the social channels. Just be on the ones that make the most sense for your church.
Yep.
But on those tools that can be discovered and claimed by others, I would just get on there and create accounts just so at least you have a presence there.
Yeah. Good, man. That's really good. All right, Haley. One more question. We'll begin to wrap up here. But so
You
you've
already
mentioned.
said one more question, but I'll
Oh,
take another.
can I take one more?
Just kidding.
One more to
Sure,
close us out here
absolutely.
today.
Let's do it.
So you mentioned that one thing that you do is you do these secret shopping things where you come to churches, or I think you
Mhm.
look at people's websites and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Just last thought as we wrap up, what is there any kind of low hanging fruit? What do you see every time that drives you crazy that people are doing wrong, or just an easy little tweak that we might be able to make either in person or online? Do you see, is there a, oh, 90% of the churches do this and this would be an easy fix? Maybe there's nothing quite like that, but do you have any kind of what's an easy kind of takeaway that we might be able to see just from your experience?
Hmm. Well, I always look for, are your social channels linked to your site, and
Okay.
are they accurate, or are all of them there? And I
Mhm.
noticed that most churches are not on YouTube. So again, that's a low hanging fruit
Yeah.
where you could be on. But the other thing is, I think just the language that we're telling on the websites is not good. It's so internal and it's
Mhm.
not great for the first time visitor. And it's also not great for the regular attender. So I'm not really sure who they're having build websites, but it's a lot of churches out there.
Mhm.
Um, just the flow of the website is not telling the story I think they want it to tell in
Okay.
95% of the time of the cases that we see. And so just take a look at your website from a fresh perspective.
Mhm.
It's not putting announcements right first thing for the first time visitor is not a great first impression. That's something I would swipe left on. So take a look at that and see what first impression you're making. Are your values there? Like, we love families. So easy to put there. And if
Right.
I have kids, I'm going to be like, oh, they love families. This is somewhere I want to go to.
Right.
Um, so just try, like, if you don't think you're capable of doing a fresh look at your site, that's what Justin and I are there for. We love looking at things and just seeing how we can help make them better.
Mhm.
Again, we're not going to judge you. We just want to help make it better. So yeah, the story your website is telling, and then get yourself on YouTube, #2 search engine. Come on, guys.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
that's
that's
good.
all. That's all I have for that.
No, that's great. And the only thing I would add, just really quickly, if you're going to put "We love families" big on your website, you better love families, and you better actually live
Oh
that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they should be able to see that as soon as they walk in. Like you mentioned, you can't say "We love families" on your website and then not talk about families once they get in the door, right?
Or not really love them. Yeah, because
Yes.
good marketing will make a bad product fail faster.
Yes, absolutely.
Bam.
Hey, Haley, we covered a lot of ground. We covered a lot today. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great getting to talk to you.
Thank
Again,
you
I
for
encourage
having
you to
me.
check out digifora.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Awesome. Or just look up Haley Veturis on all the socials. She's a great follow. So Haley, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.